I had just finished folding the last of the towels when the phone buzzed. Grayson's voice came through the speaker. Casual, clipped. Flights are $1,300 each. If you can't afford it, just stay behind. He didn't say it to be cruel. That's the part that stung. He said it like it was math, like love had a line item. I stood there with my hand on the laundry basket, the same way I'd stood by his crib at 2 a.m. 35 years ago, singing through fevers, brushing sweaty hair from his forehead. I said nothing, just nodded, even though he couldn't see me. That night, as I was rinsing my tea mug, my phone chimed again. An alert from the credit card company. 4 business class tickets purchased. Merchant West Coast travel. I blinked at the screen, then opened the receipt. Passenger names Grayson Quinn, Lena Feld, Sadie Feld, Russell Feld, Lena's ex-husband. Not me. I scrolled down slowly, heart thudding, not out of shock, but recognition. Of course they used my card. Of course they didn't ask. I sat down, opened the banking app, tapped dispute. All then tapped lock card. It felt like snapping a thread that had been fraying for years. At 6:08 the next morning, another message lit up my screen. Lena, why isn't anything paid for? We're at check-in. I wiped the fog from my glasses and typed back slowly, deliberately. What you said, I stayed behind. I turned the phone face down, pulled the curtains back. Outside, the day was clear still. Later that afternoon, I booked a train to Beaufort. Not far, just enough. No family, no favors, no guilt, just me. And for once, that was enough. I printed the receipt and slid it into the envelope marked personal right on top of the stack labeled loans to Grayson. When Grayson was 10, he broke his arm falling from the neighbor's tree. I remember the way he clung to my shirt, biting back tears, insisting he was fine. I held him tighter than necessary, whispering, "It's okay to need help." He doesn't remember that day, but I do. I always remember. Years later, when Lena was accepted into dental school and their savings didn't stretch far enough, they called me. I didn't hesitate. I wired the tuition payment the same day, told them not to worry about repayment. Family invests in family, I said, like I believed it. When Grayson's cafe folded after 9 months, he came by with a manila folder and a nervous smile. Second mortgage, he said. Just need someone to co-sign. Temporary. I signed. He hugged me, but it was distracted. He had a call to take. Then came Sadie. When Lena and Grayson both landed full-time positions, I moved into the guest room. Just for a while, they said. 2 years later, I was still the one packing lunches, fixing ponytails, staying up through stomach flu, while they traveled for conferences and spa weekends. I told myself this was what mothers do, what grandmothers do, what good women do. When I had gallbladder surgery, I told them it was outpatient. Don't make a fuss, I said. They didn't. Lena mailed a card. Grayson called 2 days later from an airport lounge. You sound strong, Mom. Let us know if you need anything. I did need something, just not from them. I needed to stop pretending this was love when it was obligation dressed up as closeness. I needed to stop rewriting history in their favor. I needed to see clearly what I had taught them, that my love was bottomless, costless, and always available. That afternoon, I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out every receipt I'd saved. Not out of pettiness, out of proof, because I was done calling it generosity when it had turned into debt. I reached for a blank sheet of paper and wrote 2 words at the top: outstanding balance. The message from Lena came in while I was steeping chamomile. Why isn't the trip paid for? No greeting. No real question, really. Just a flat tone, like I'd missed an obvious assignment. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the scent of lemon balm curling around me like a boundary. I typed slowly. What you said, I stayed behind. Then I set the phone down and didn't pick it up again. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. Tight-throated, blinking hard, wondering how to say everything without sounding bitter. I didn't feel small this time, just done. By noon, I was browsing weekend stays online. A small inn in Beaufort caught my eye, nothing fancy. Whitewashed walls, breakfast in a sunroom close enough to the marsh to hear frogs at night. I booked 3 nights paid in full with my own unfrozen card. I packed lightly 2 dresses, my worn paperback copy of The Secret Garden, and a notebook. No makeup, no gifts, no one to plan for. When I stepped onto the train that Friday morning, I didn't tell anyone. No social media post, no group text, no forwarding address. I watched the landscape shift past the window and let my shoulders fall in a way I hadn't in years. On the second evening, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and finally exhaled, not from relief, but from recognition. This stillness, this absence of being needed wasn't loneliness. It was space. I pulled out my notebook and flipped to the page titled Outstanding Balance. I started listing amounts, dates, names. Not to guilt them, not even to shame them. I just needed to see it all in one place. Needed to call it what it was. I worked my way down the list line by line, not from anger, but clarity. $3,000 business investment loan to Grayson, never repaid. $3,100 second mortgage cosign when his cafe collapsed. $100 for unauthorized plane tickets to Hawaii. $600 groceries during their move-in transition. $840 Sadie's orthodontist installments over 18 months. $380 utility bills during the months they forgot to transfer accounts. $600 Lena's exam prep course for dental licensing. $8,620 total outstanding balance. I formatted it like any other invoice columns, totals a due date. I even included a small header reimbursement request, 24 months of unreturned financial support. I read it 3 times. It looked professional, almost cold, but it was true. Every cent. At the bottom I typed, please remit full payment within 30 business days. No further financial extensions will be granted beyond this period. Then without overthinking, I sent it to the family group chat. No preamble, no smiley faces, no explanation. Just the truth told. The silence didn't last long. First came Lena. Wait, what is this? Then Grayson, you're joking, right? Followed by who sends an invoice to their own family. I didn't answer. Ramona chimed in next. All this is hurtful and unnecessary. We're family. Family supports each other. I stared at her words longer than the others. For years I had agreed. For years I had lived it. But this wasn't support. It was extraction. And I was done donating pieces of my life to people who called it normal. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just walked to the kitchen, and made myself a grilled cheese with tomato slices the way I liked it. No one to please, no corners to cut. The chat kept buzzing in the background. I didn't silence it. I simply didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new file on my laptop and renamed the folder Not Guilt, Just Math. Delea hadn't called me in years. We weren't close, even when she and Grayson were married, polite, cordial, careful not to step on each other's parenting toes. He moved away after the divorce, remarried, and sent me a Christmas card once that first year. After that, nothing. So when her name appeared on my screen, I hesitated. Then I answered. Era, she said. Her voice was steadier than I remembered. I know this is out of nowhere, but I think you need to see something. She didn't try to soften it with small talk. Just said she'd send a file, and she did. An email arrived within minutes. Subject line. You deserve to know. There were screenshots, account statements, transfer logs, over a dozen quiet withdrawals from an old joint account I had opened back when I let Grayson manage some of my bills during my gallbladder recovery. I'd never officially closed it. I'd forgotten it even existed. The amounts weren't large on their own. $150 here, $300 there, but they added up. Nearly $5,000 drained in under 2 years. All of it during the same months. He was telling me they were rebuilding after the cafe failed. Delea had gone further, matching transaction dates to Venmo screenshots from Lena's feed dinners, concert tickets, and 2 deposits to what looked like a sports betting app. And below all of that, a message thread between Grayson and my sister Ramona. Ramona, accounts overdrawn again. Ara will find out. Grayson, she won't. Just cover it. I'll fix it later. Ramona already transferred from mine. Don't worry, she's been through enough. They knew. Both of them knew what was happening, knew I wasn't giving consent, and decided the best solution was to cover it quietly and keep me in the dark. I sat still, letting the weight of that choice settle on my chest. I wasn't just at the family ATM. I was a loose thread they were trying to keep from noticing the unraveling. I forwarded the file to myself and renamed it Proof Not Paranoia. Then I went back to the invoice. I added a new line, $4,920 unauthorized transfers from joint account. And under the total, I crossed out the old number and wrote the new one in red ink, $13,540. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just printed a fresh copy and slid it into the manila envelope marked second notice. They showed up on a Sunday afternoon unannounced, parked crooked in front of my building like the world still bent for them. I watched from the window as they walked up the path. Grayson in a hoodie I'd bought him years ago. Lena in sunglasses like she couldn't bear to make eye contact with the world. I opened the door because I wanted to hear what they'd say when they had to look me in the face. It was just a mix-up, Grayson said. Seriously, Lena added, crossing her arms. You're being dramatic. I let the words hang in the doorway. Grayson stepped forward. You could have called. Instead, you send us some invoice. Are you trying to humiliate us? No, I said, voice even. I'm trying to stop bleeding, he scoffed. Over a few plane tickets. I looked at him, at the boy I once carried through thunderstorms. The man who now only reached for me with open palms and closed ears. It's not the tickets, I said, it's the pattern. It's every time you asked without asking. It's every time you thanked me with absence. Lena rolled her eyes. You've always been so emotional. I stepped back without raising my voice. I am not your backup plan anymore. I'm not the account you dip into when the world doesn't go your way. They stood there waiting for more. An apology, maybe an invitation to sit, but I didn't offer either. I just closed the door, not in anger, not in triumph, just to mark the line. I stood behind it for a while, hand on the knob. On the other side, I heard shuffling, the brief argument of people unused to being denied. Then finally, silence. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. On the counter sat the printed invoice, still unpaid, still unacknowledged. I placed it in a manila envelope and wrote one word across the front in bold markers, second notice. It happened just as I was folding laundry. An alert on my phone I almost ignored. I thought it was another low balance notice or a reminder about some subscription I forgot to cancel, but it wasn't. Decline transaction 41329, Island Rentals, Maui. I stared at it. Same card, the one I'd frozen after the plane ticket stunt. The one that by all logic no one should still have access to. And yet here we were. I called the fraud department and gave them the last 4 digits, already knowing who it was. The woman on the line asked if I wanted to dispute the charge. Yes, I said. And please note that this is the second incident involving this card and the same individual. She paused. Would you like to escalate to law enforcement? I looked at the wall at the pinned check still hanging under the quote. No, not yet. Just document everything. When I hung up, the silence in the apartment felt heavier than usual. Not sad, not lonely, just full of all the things I'd finally stopped excusing. 10 minutes later, another buzz. A message from Lena. This time, family doesn't do this. I almost laughed. That line, short and sharp, said more about how she saw me than any apology ever could. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a screenshot, opened the folder on my desktop labeled Family Patterns I Won't Repeat, and dropped the image in. Then I renamed the file Guilt Tactics Phase 2. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the window. A child passed by on a scooter, laughing, the kind of sound I used to drop everything to tend to. Now I just listened. Later that night, I lit a candle and pulled out my old checkbook. I opened it to a blank page, let the pen rest on the line. I didn't write anything. I just let my hand feel the weight of a page that, for once, wasn't owed to anyone. A week passed without a single message from any of them. No updates, no explanations, not even a half-hearted emoji. I thought maybe they'd chosen silence as their form of protest. That would have been fine with me. Then the envelope came. No return address. My name written in Grayson's handwriting, still slanted, still a little too forceful on the downstrokes. I sat with it for a minute before opening it. Not out of fear, just preparation. Inside was a single check. $8,620. Nothing else. No. No note, no apology, no mention of the remaining balance, just the amount from the first invoice. I turned it over, checked the signature. It was real. I held it in my hand for a while, then walked to the study and pulled a pushpin from the wall. Next to my desk above the light switch was a slip of paper I'd written on the same day I sent the invoice. You taught them to take. Now teach them you're not theirs to empty. I pinned the check right beneath it, not to display it, just to remind myself this was never about the money. It was about the pattern, and the pattern had finally cracked. I didn't rush to cash it, let it hang there in quiet consequence. It had taken 30 years of motherhood to realize that accountability didn't need to come with flowers or phone calls. Sometimes it showed up in a plain envelope, wordless, but not weightless. I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat by the window, the check fluttering slightly behind me. Somewhere inside, I felt the first clean breath of closure, not loud, not grand, just a quiet edge, where giving finally met its limit. It happened on a Thursday. I was thumbing through a poetry anthology in the back corner of Bluebird Books, waiting for the barista to call my name when I heard his voice behind me. Mom. I turned slowly. Grayson stood by the cafe counter holding a paper cup and a cautious smile, like he was bracing for a weather report he didn't want to hear. Didn't expect to see you here, he said, stepping closer. I nodded. I come on Thursdays for the quiet. He looked thinner, not in a tragic way, just in the way people look when they've had to sit in the discomfort of someone else's boundary. He motioned to a nearby table. Can we sit for a minute? We did. He stirred his coffee, even though nothing had been added. A nervous habit. We miss you, he said. Sadie asks about you. I let that hang. We made mistakes. Sure, he added, lowering his voice. But you didn't have to go nuclear. My hand stayed folded. You lit the fuse years ago, Grayson. I just stopped holding the flame. His mouth opened, then closed. The silence between us filled the corners of the table. I didn't know how bad it had gotten, he mumbled. You should have said something sooner. I did, I said gently. Every time I gave more than I had, I was saying something. He looked down at the floor. I never wanted it to be like this. Neither did I. The drinks came. Mine was warm. I took one sip and stood. I'm not angry, I said, sliding the chair back. I'm just different now. He stood too, but didn't follow. I left the shop with the same ease I'd entered, passing the display of new releases, without needing to browse. The check was still pinned to the wall at home, untouched. But that night I opened a fresh envelope, pulled it down, and finally cashed it. The next morning, I walked to the credit union and deposited the check. Then I took the full amount, every cent, and wrote another check, this time made out to the local women's shelter. The director blinked twice when I handed it to her. I told her no one owed me a plaque. Just make sure someone else's light bill gets paid. Someone else's child gets their braces. I left without waiting for thanks. That week I started baking. My first sourdough loaf looked like a doorstop, but it made the house smell alive. By the third try, I got the crust right. I started leaving small slices in the lobby for the neighbors. One of them asked for the recipe. I told her it wasn't written down. Not yet. I joined a hiking group that met every Sunday just after sunrise. I hadn't seen the ridge above Hawthorne Lake in years. I'd forgotten how good the wind felt when no one was asking you to come down early to make lunch. And then there was Thomas. We met in the non-fiction aisle at the library. Two people reaching for the same book about trees. We talked for an hour without noticing. The next week he invited me for coffee. I told him about the check, about Grayson, about all of it. He didn't wince. He didn't offer solutions. You were never wrong to give, he said quietly. Just wrong to give endlessly. I smiled, not because it healed me, but because I'd already started healing before he said it. We walk together sometimes now. We read aloud on park benches. He listens. I don't explain. In the evenings, I write again. Nothing grand, just reflections. Truths I once swallowed. I let them out now, word by word. I light candles when no one's coming over. I rest when I'm tired. I eat the middle slice of the cake. And when I think of my children, I don't feel rage or regret. I still love them, but I don't carry them anymore. I carry myself.